Spanning the globe to bring you the constant variety of art, it's the Tenant Podcast. I'm Todd Pearson, coming to you from the 40 West Arts District in Lakewood, Colorado, and joining me from his podcast studio in Rapid City, South Dakota. You know him as quite possibly the most interesting man in the world, my partner and co-host, Wes Brown.
Oh my God, Todd, it's another week. Holy crap.
Is it another week?
We
made it one more week?
We made it another week.
Oh my God. I can't believe it's another week.
Even though we try really hard to be canceled, we haven't been canceled yet. So we're going to try a little harder tonight.
How do you try to be canceled? Aren't you just are, right?
Well, I suppose.
You just be
canceled.
Controversial. Yeah, there you go.
So what's new with you, Todd? Anything good? Do we want to talk about anything fun?
What am I doing? I am in the process of scheduling podcasts.
Nice.
Hopefully a really interesting guest in the very near future.
Nice.
In addition to our guest this evening.
Oh my God. I can't wait.
And I'm in the process of planning a trip for 25 people to go to Montana this summer
Nice.
to a Boy Scout camp in the middle of Flathead Lake. It's called Melita Island.
That sounds
so
awesome.
I'm trying to get my act together, my rear in gear, so to speak, to get this trip kind of sussed out. I didn't realize that they've changed some things with the national park system. And so with certain parks, at least, like we're going to be up in Glacier National Park area. And if you want to go up the main road, the really fantastic one that kind of takes you up to the top through the range of mountains there.
Highway to the Sun.
There you go. You have to make a reservation now.
Yeah.
And if you don't get that reservation, then you're kind of SOL. The only other way you can get in is if you make it like the day before. So we're going to have to pivot otherwise. But anyway, so that's what I'm up to.
Nice. Well, I just dealt with 24 kids doing We the People showcase.
Yeah, congratulations.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. And every year we get a panel of judges together and they grill these kids on the Constitution, and they prepared statements of selected questions. And they always knock it out of the park. And I always get one of the judges or one of the parents come and say, watching these kids gives me hope for the future. So that's what we need. Just keep looking at the hope for the future. But they did an amazing job at Spearfish High School. They'll be going on to nationals in April and competing nationwide with schools from all over the country. So
that's fantastic, man.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Like you said, we need that in this
craziness.
as we see how the election year shakes out. Our guest is shaking her head.
So here's you'll find this funny. And I shouldn't say this on the podcast just in case she's listening, but one of the kids said they want to be governor one day. And I said, can you start tomorrow?
And what was her response?
Like, what?
Deer in the headlights.
Yeah. And there was somebody else there that was, I think, pro Christie, and he kind of was like, shh, like I was going to get canceled, but you never know.
That's funny.
So yeah, I thought that was kind of funny anyway.
Yeah. She needs somebody to run against her.
Well, she's, she's done as governor this go around.
Is that right?
Yeah. So they can only do 8 years in a row, but she can come back later. But she's been pretty tight with Trump. So I don't know if she's going for a VP slot or if she's looking for, like, she'd be a great Department of Ag person because she comes from, the ag background, and she is, pro ranching and pro farming. So she would be a good Department of Ag.
Right.
But I think she has bigger plans. So we'll see. But anyway.
Oh, man. All right. Well, we've already gone down the rabbit hole.
Yes. There's rabbit hole number 1 of many tonight.
Yes.
There you
go. Tonight is the night of rabbit holes.
That's right.
I should have worn some ears.
There's a little voice in our heads right now. We should probably introduce her and get on with this show.
I think we should.
Let's do smart, buddy.
Let me do my spiel.
Let's do it.
Yeah. Thank you for joining us. Remember, you can always find out what we're up to via our social media on Instagram at Tenant Podcast, or Tenant Podcast Facebook page, and of course our website, tenantpodcast.com, where you can see Wes Brown's shining happy face. Our guest this week is no stranger to the podcast. We last talked with her back in November 2020 after her stellar show and series Bend the Iron. That episode is number 54 in our archive if you'd like to go back and check that out. You can check out her phenomenal work at her website, amyleelummus.com, and you can follow her on Instagram at @lummusart. Amy, thank you for joining us.
You did my last name right and everything. That was beautiful, Todd. Thank you.
Do you get Amy Lummus a lot?
I do.
All the time, don't you?
All the time, and that is wrong. However, they come from the same root. It means people of the bog. So, gentlemen,
Nice.
you are looking at the Swamp Queen.
Sweet.
People of the bog.
What bog? Are we talking Scotland bog or Irish bogs?
It is actually Old English.
Oh,
so,
Okay.
I don't know. Other than that, I'm a bit of a mutt, and not even strictly Euro mutt. So, but the Lummus and Lummus, they are the same root, coming from the same thing, and yeah.
The same clan?
It's like I forget, it's derivative of one name, and I forget exactly the name that it is, but yeah.
I actually heard Kate Bush's Running Up the Hill in Old English, and it is weird. It's sung in Old English, like you can't even understand it. So it's interesting.
Yeah, I did the research to find out about it, and the irony of finding out that you doing all this research and finding out that that's where you're from the bog. It's like you want to, I wanted it to be something totally interesting and allowed. No, it's just peasant farmer from a boggy region. And so that's where your last name comes from. But yeah.
Interesting. And probably some Viking blood in there.
God, I hope so.
I'm
You
picturing
got
you
kind
in
of a
medieval garb, all Vikinged out,
with the horn hat.
There you go.
with like paint on your face,
Hell
like
yeah.
war paint on your face, and carrying a big broadsword.
Absolutely. Yes. This is it. This is how I try to envision myself like this. So I appreciate that I'm putting that energy out in the universe.
Hell yeah. You're badass.
Thank you. Yeah. That's one of my guilty pleasures is actually fantasy fiction, like feudal society fantasy fiction, a little bit of magic, a little bit of sword play. Yeah, that's my jam.
Do you have a cosplay channel?
No. Yeah, there's not much I haven't read in terms of that genre. It started during COVID and it just hasn't stopped. So,
Nice.
yeah.
So like, if you could recommend one book for somebody that they have to read it, in that vein, what would it be?
A few. My number one, and this is for me because I really enjoy the structure and the God, what is the word I'm looking for? The lore behind Terry Mancour in the Spellmonger series. But Patrick Rothfuss, God, what a poet. What a painter of words. That is, talk about something that you feel like his words fill you up so much that you're not hungry, you're not thirsty, you're just so completely lost for it. So he'll always be one of my mains, but he's one of those writers that has only written, I think, like 4 books, but those are just such magnificent works that that's all he had to write,
Right. No, that's awesome. Love to hear that.
Yeah.
You mentioned you started reading this kind of genre during COVID. That was the last time we talked to you. We were still deep in the pandemic.
Yeah.
How did the pandemic affect you in your work?
That's a really good question, Todd. I think actually that my trajectory changed quite a bit due to the pandemic. I was making work about my mental health, but not mine specifically. And I think that that's kind of that graduation piece, you're in university when you're talking about, well, this is my exploration of my feelings on my thing, and at that point I was just really discovering a lot of the really interesting wordplay with neuroscience and how that has such strong visuals, and with the trains and so forth. And so while exploring my own brains, kind of leaving that for other people as well. But it was not the right time. And if I can say anything about myself, again, I think I'm reiterating this, but I just hate time. My timing is never right. I'm never, it's never quite on the nose. But with that, I think that I had to kind of gear shift and find something a little more uplifting, because people were not as ready for any kind of hard introspection into their mental landscape. And I think it is the job of the artist to do that and to force that. However, I also depend on my art to feed me and my children. So there's that duality where you have to understand, there's a sales component to it too, and an audience component. To answer your question, I wanted to talk about what I wanted to talk about, but I had to do it with levity, with, keeping things off the cuff a little. And and that's kind of where I ended up finding Mettle Martyr, and how I ended up finding kind of, imagery that was very classic, retro, silly, and then started talking about these issues that I wanted to speak about through titles. So that was kind of my answer to that. Like, you can still have a silly, interesting, fun image, but then I can pair it with, Kruger style, if you will. Do you guys ever read Barbara Kruger's titles, where she has it's like untitled number 2, and then it has, a subtitle, and it's a paragraph about what she's.
No, I'm not familiar with that. I thought you were going to take it in a whole different direction. I thought we were talking about Freddy Krueger.
Right.
Barbara Kruger she's one of my primary inspirations, and she does photography, but she was really innovative in the 50s, and she blew up these ad images from kind of the Mad Men period, and blew them up. She was one of the first artists to use a Xerox machine to do a lot of her work, and they were all installation style. And I don't know if you're familiar at all with the Supreme brand, the little red label says Supreme. That's actually Barbara Kruger's work. They stole that.
Yeah.
She won that lawsuit. They ended up buying the image from her eventually. But yeah. So all of her work had these really fun text graphics, and what she had always done really, really well was bringing in levity and sarcasm.
Yeah.
And so the next series I started getting into is called Mettle Martyr, and I called it the sardonic celebration of American femininity. And so, you had the America's Sweetheart, like, silly images with 1950s pearls and collars and stripes and A-line dresses, and paired with, a staggering statistic regarding safety of American women. So
yeah, and Todd would recognize Barbara's work, because like she's done the face where it's and it says your body is a battleground in big red blocks, and the typography, and then it's a woman's face. One is a negative and one is a positive. If you've seen it, you'd recognize her stuff. So I know you're familiar with it, but anyway, yeah. I love this series, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Mettle Martyr. Yeah.
Yeah.
There was two iterations of it. The first one was right on the tail end of the pandemic.
Yep.
And I had an opportunity for a solo exhibition at Bit Factory, but it was, again, pandemic time. So I had complete creative control. So it was like, let's just see what happens, you know? But again, I wanted to bring in levity, and I wanted to bring in something that was educational, but that wouldn't, what is that trope? Catch more flies with honey, which is so weird and gross. But
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, so that was kind of my approach to it. And then it was really commercially successful. We did really well with that show, unexpectedly, kind of. You know, it was one of the most successful shows I'd ever had. And again, it was in the middle of the pandemic. So I wanted to do it again. But I had a friend of mine said, well, after that show, said, well, you're not really like a painter. And I was like, what? And they said, well, yeah, like your paintings, they're not like paintings.
Mm.
And because those were such small scale studies, it was like, oh, people don't know I can paint my ass off. I'm going to do that. So I decided to really elevate the work. And I really wanted to showcase that I have the ability to make an acrylic painting look like an oil painting, talk like an oil painting, walk like an oil painting, and that I can replicate that experience, you know, that view of that painting over and over and over. So the molding of the skin and that kind of thing, it's something I take deep pride in. And I know it's silly, but you know, a lot of folks that work in acrylic like I do, they don't take time to blend and mold and so forth. So yeah, I just wanted to paint my ass off and to really, really show off my skill set while I had this kind of framework of kitschy image, fun model, and then statistic. And then for the second iteration of Mettle Martyr, I worked with Porchlight JFC, which is a nonprofit that works with survivors of domestic violence and sexual assault. Worked with them to meet some folks, meet some gals who wanted to pose, and also bring a little more social advocacy to the work. So I took it that one step further, where every single woman that posed for me was a survivor, or what we call like a domino survivor. So, you know, they were a child and they lived in a home where domestic violence was happening, or so on and so forth. So that kind of thing. So that's kind of where the advocacy piece came in. And yeah, Mettle Martyr changed the way I viewed myself and I viewed my work, and it changed everything for me, because I looked around me and I said, I don't know anybody else that's doing this. So, and maybe they are, but maybe not in the same way I'm doing it. And I got such catharsis from the quality of that, you know, that like social advocacy piece, and that, you know, it just felt like there was a part of that was the part that was missing to my work. I'll never say anybody's work is not perfect and amazing and beautiful. I know I have the capacity within my skill sets to make it something tremendous. And Mettle really gave me that platform to start considering myself like an advocate first, an artist second. And
I got a follow up here. So you said the first iteration of it was commercially successful. How was the second received?
Oh, we opened that show in November, mid-November. And while typically that's the best time to open a show for galleries, because Christmas, right? Christmas is right around the corner, and typically galleries get a huge influx of purchasing. The work was about domestic violence and sexual assault,
right.
And a few of the approaches we took, I learned a lot. I say we because my curator Bill and I work very closely for a lot of these shows. But yeah, I learned a lot and took an L on that one. I didn't break even, which was the first time that's ever happened for me.
Mm-hmm.
Really?
Yeah.
So that surprises me, because I went to the opening of both of those shows, and both of them were jam-packed, and people seemed like they were over the moon in both iterations of those shows.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. I think the difference for us insofar as financial aspect, and this gets into like the business of art, which is part of, it's not the art. So I don't love this part of it, but it is part of the job. And this is my full-time job. So to ignore it would be remiss. However, the first time we had a table that had all sorts of fun mementos and merchandise that were anywhere from $2 to $50. And usually my business approach to these things is advocacy first, right? So I want somebody to have something from that show. If they have $2 to spend, I want them to have that sticker and to remember, like, this reminds me of that thing that I felt seen and I felt heard and I felt, special in that moment, whatever. So I wanted to have that kind of accessibility with merchandise and that sort of thing. And I don't want anybody that's walking in the gallery that they walk out empty-handed. That's the other approach to my art business. And while we had all of those products available the first time, the second iteration, we really wanted to have it be more art focused because, again, I take pride on my skills in realism and my obsession with the technique and the technical quality of the work. So we really wanted to make that the rock star, that was the movie star of the show. But what ended up happening is we kind of put merchandise off to the side, and that made up about 60% of sales the first time through. So what I learned is that while making your technical skills the rock star, sure, you could do that, but the approach, for at least for me and for the folks that I want to touch with I want people to walk away with something. I learned that the pricing things for accessibility is important to my work and the people I'm trying to reach. And, that's going to kind of be a driving force moving forward for me. So learned a lot, learned a whole lot, but, at the end of the day, I think what I got out of that show, I'll never stop gaining lessons from that show. I think, the amount of hours I put in that, the amount of obsession I put in that, my insatiable need to represent these women so perfectly, so beautifully, so articulately. There was so much that I wanted for that, and that I lost a lot of the authenticity of the story and that need to make everything beautiful and perfect. Because you can just take a pretty photo of yourself, but if somebody is to paint you and tell your story through a visual representation, it's making things so elegant and beautiful is not probably the way you want to go about it. But I learn a lot. So that's my biggest takeaway.
Well, and that's a win in itself, though. If you can walk away learning something and taking something away, let's say you did poorly and then you didn't learn anything from it, then that's a disappointment, right? Because
Sure.
you should have to, you should learn something. You still created beautiful art. You still created, that 10,000 hour thing where you've honed your craft. So there's all that.
Yeah.
I mean, but I understand when you say commercially, when you're trying to, put, like you said, put food on the table for you and your kids, that's a crushing blow. So
yeah, it was about a year and a half in the making. And yeah. But the best walk away was that my colleagues that I respect, truly respect, those people that came and saw the show, that took their time away to see that, walked away with, holy shit, and if that's the response you're getting from a colleague that you absolutely love their work and that you respect their work, then done. Good. Yeah. So when I look back on that, it's kind of, I have to remind myself that, where do we, it's that weird monkey dance you do in adulting. Like, okay, financials or, self-respect. Financially successful, self-respect. I don't know. And especially within the arts, we have to do that monkey dance a lot. You just jump back and forth on that line of, am I maintaining my self-respect and my, my vision as an artist, or am I doing something just for the money?
Right.
And so at least at the end of the day, I put it all on the table. And now I learned a hell of a lot. And maybe taking a year and a half and making 65 plus paintings and about 20 sculptures, maybe you don't need to do that. Maybe you could do 10. Sure. And even though, you want to make sure every person that calls you or texts you and says, hey, I'd love for you to paint me or whatever, even though you want to make sure every single one of those women has a moment and a voice and everything, it's okay to say, okay, I'm going to fit you in for the next show or whatever. So
right.
That was a big learning experience for me too. She doesn't, or he or whomever isn't going to, their trajectory won't change by me staying up until 4 a.m, making them the prettiest picture ever.
This is a little bit of an analogy. There's a famous director whose name escapes me right now. He's famously says he does one for the studio and then he does a film for himself. And then he'll do a film for the studio and then another one for himself. So he kind of, like you said, this monkey dance, like he's creating the artistic stuff he wants, but also the commercial stuff that he knows the studio can sell. Right. So it's that balance. If you can create the stuff that, like Todd and I both talked about, our passion projects or whatever. If you can do something that fills your heart and your soul and then do something that's commercial, that's a happy balance. But like you said, if you get really like, I'm doing 65 huge ass paintings, that's going to take me all year to do. But, so.
Exactly. But really diving in, because I had the framework from the first Mettle Martyr show, and I didn't have to kind of use my brain power and to explore that at all. I had this beautiful little box that was already all set up for me. I got the chance to explore a little more surrealism and pushing the look of a contemporary portrait. What does that look like? And how does that remain part of the Mettle Martyr series? And is this still part of the Mettle Martyr series? And so all of that, I think, I wouldn't have learned those lessons otherwise. And there is a thing that, I have the dog with the bone syndrome. I don't know if you guys experience this, but you get so obsessed over a project. And I know I do it, but I've never been quite that obsessed. Again, because I was I had this thing in my heart that I felt I was going to change the world, right? It just with this one little art show, everything was just going to change from here. And it was just going to have to be this way. And and it was just this thing where it was like, this doesn't have to be anything more than it is. You can just make the art and cut the rest of the fat away. Be an artist, make the art. If it sells commercially, great. If it doesn't, oh well, move on. But this is your job. This doesn't have to be your everything. And learning a work-life balance, I think I've always pretended that I have a good work-life balance, but that show put it to the test. I failed the test, and then I figured out that, oh yeah, there should probably be a balance here. But, if the kids survived, I survived, everybody's here, we're all good. There was a lot of laundry at the end of November, and, and we managed. And we all walked away with, I'm like, never again am I going to pour that much of my time, heart, soul, money, stress, everything into a show. But I can, because you just don't need to give that much of yourself. You know, there's that quote, your art in the self or yourself in the art, you know? There's that
Yeah.
you need the barrier.
There you go.
That seems like a really important realization, but I know just enough about you. I don't know that you have that in you.
Yeah,
I
it's
don't
really
know
hard.
that. I think for somebody like you, that is incredibly difficult. And you touched on a couple different things, and I want to back this up just a little bit. You came off Bend the Iron, and you said you wanted to pivot with this next show, and you kind of gave us the foundation, the kind of a little bit of a thought behind it. But is there a thread that runs outside of your skill set and your ability to make beautiful things, beautiful paintings? Is there a thread that runs from the work in Bend the Iron to Mettle Martyr?
Absolutely. I think that, well, it's kind of a bifold on that, you know. First of all, because I'm a realism artist, and I think obviously the work is hyper realistic, there's a storytelling component that I feel when you're looking at realism, the best analogy I can say is it's country music sometimes a little bit, where it tells a story and that story is relatable. And that's the difference between, for instance, like a realistic painting and an abstract expressionist painting, where the abstract painting is a moment, a breath, a glimpse. It's this, and it's a feeling. Realism, you get the entire story. So both are valid, both are interesting, both are wonderful. So outside of it, just both of those series being realistic, the synthesis for Bend the Iron was my experiences in life and learning how to cope with my experiences in a relationship where I was unsafe, and what that eventually looked like and what that turned into. It was really tough, I think, and this is often what happens, especially in situations like that, where nobody really knows what's going on behind closed doors, and then something really terrible happens, and everybody feels really bad, but they don't know what to tell you or to say to you or how to support you, so they just leave you. And making all new friends, learning all new things, you know, starting from scratch from your life completely, even your children's friends, you know, those families don't even want to talk to you anymore, not for anything you did. Now your children are also suffering for the choices that somebody decided to make that affected your safety, but now there's this domino effect. And so within Bend the Iron, I was really exploring kind of feelings of, you know, feeling really lost and feeling like I had to, you know, keep this train rolling. And there was so much in mental health, but also I felt like I was the train. I had to carry it all. And I had to make sure everybody was safe and everybody got to where they had to get to go. At the end of the day, everybody was fed, was clothed, was housed, was this, was that, you know, and an artist, all this stuff. And I have to do it all on time, and I have to make it, you know, all that stuff. It just felt like, wow. So what did I need to do to say what I wanted to say, but without saying it, you know? Because the worst thing in art, I always say, is this is where art and carpentry are two vastly different things, because with art, we want to be coaxed, we want to be hinted, we want to be reminded. But in carpentry, you hit that nail on the head, you know? With visuals, especially when we're storytelling with visuals, we don't want the nail to be hit on the head. We want the country song. We want nuance. We want a mystery there a little bit. We want to fill in the blanks ourselves. So what I wanted to do with Mettle Martyr was to say what I needed to say. I needed to say my truth. I had to say what I needed to say, but how could I say it in a way that was honest, but that also validated my experiences? I think that was a big, big part of the experience entire. And through Mettle Martyr and through all the research I did, 90% of American women report having experienced domestic violence or sexual assault in their lifetime. That is staggering. And while I think that number is changing and culturally things are changing, that's also an unacceptable number. And so how do I also at the same time, now I'm learning this, now I feel less alone, now I feel like my voice is getting heard, but how do I give somebody else the same tools? I can't hand them a paintbrush, but maybe I could be their paintbrush. And so I think that's the piece going from that series to Mettle, and now jumping to what I've been doing lately. I think I don't ever foresee a time where I don't want to do that work, that I don't want to give women a voice that feel voiceless.
So what we're talking about, and correct me if I'm wrong, I mean, it sounds to me like having space between that work, Bend the Iron, and going back and looking at the last two shows of Mettle Martyr, that you really had time to reflect on what was going on there. And what we're talking about is, you being in a tough position, getting out of a bad marriage and experiencing some abuse yourself. Is that correct?
Yeah. And there's even a level, like right now, I hesitate even to say it because I don't want to sound whiny. And that's the last thing I want to do. But it's funny because women will be the first to say, get over it. That's happened to all of us, which is most of the time true. That's the worst part about it, is that I felt like I was getting hushed. And then I felt like once I started saying this in a way that felt more of like an every woman approach, and then people were like, well, yeah, duh. Like, what? Wait, but what? I just, those are mixed signals. But those are also, that's what has to be rectified, is that the more that this becomes a social taboo, that the more, or the less frequently it happens. And yeah, I heard it put perfectly that if 90% of American women experience some kind of sexual assault, but 90% of American gentlemen don't know anybody that would ever do that to a woman. And it was like, oh, yeah. So I think just having that kind of social change and trying to be part of that and being part of that conversation and doing it in a way that felt like not so much about my specific experience, but, feels good, and it feels right, and it feels like this is what I want to be doing forever. I don't know if I'll change my approach anytime soon.
So going back, you're not being, no, you're fine. What are you sorry about? You don't have to be sorry.
I don't know, because I might be going on a tangent.
No, it's
No,
all
you're
good.
all right.
It's all pertinent information. You weren't being whiny. I look at you as a warrior, a very strong woman. My wife has experienced some of these things in her previous marriage. And, I think you're having a very important conversation with the people that view this art that you're doing, these paintings. And I know you put your heart and soul into all this. And I will tell you, it's some of the most magnificent art I've seen that's making some kind of statement or educating people. Not only is it beautiful art, but it's an educational experience as well. And it makes people stop and think. I want you to talk about, because we're talking about Metal Martyr, but we
Mhm.
really haven't discussed the meaning of the title and what that's all about. Take a moment and tell us how you came up with that.
Okay. Well, it was actually, I had a completely different name, and it was my curator, Bill, and he said it has to be this. And I was like, Metal Martyr? I hate it. It's so dumb. And he goes, no, no, swish it around in your mouth. You're gonna like it. So I started playing with the words a little bit, and that's when I fell in love, because not only is the metal a homonym, so it, metal, 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 there's all sorts of different kinds, but I loved that imagery with the homonym that it evokes, because, you're made of metal, metal mess things up, metal, I don't know, all sorts of fun things. So, sorry, the images got in my brain for a minute there. But that plus martyrdom and what martyrdom can look like in American women. And again, it's so funny that I did the thing that I hate, talking about being whiny or being, oh, woe is me. I didn't want to take that approach to advocating for safety of women, or safety of everyone, really, but safety. And oftentimes, especially with women, and I've heard this because with all of the girls or everybody that poses for me, says, well, I had to stay because of this. I had to stay because of this. And it's always, you end up martyring yourself for the cause, but nobody appreciates that martyrdom. If somebody doesn't appreciate your physical safety, they certainly don't appreciate your martyrdom. So, and I loved that once I kind of swished it around in my mouth, Metal Martyr, meddle with the idea of martyrdom, play with that a little bit, change that a little bit, change your approach to martyrdom, be a martyr for your fight, be a martyr for your, whatever it is, but don't be a martyr for somebody else, because whatever. And that alliteration, Metal Martyr, it just rolls off the tongue so beautifully. And playing with especially the fonts, with metal music fonts, and you're doing some of the merchandise and the products and stuff that we came up with, it still has such a lovely ring to it. And I can't even take credit for coming up with it. So, but it's the perfect name for the show. And it will be with me forever, because I really do think that was my, pivotal moment. So.
And for people that are listening and haven't actually went to Amy's site and looked at her stuff, when we say metal, we're not talking about the metallic metal. We're talking about METTLE. So your ability to cope. So I because it'd be easy if you're just listening to get those two confused. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Oh, sure.
And if you haven't been to her site, you need to go there, because it's amazing work. It is. It's amazing work.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. Well, yeah. And now, after that really depressing conversation, but now, doesn't it seem like it's a part of that whole conversation is that I wanted to bring in fun for, I wanted to make it more fun and interesting and hands-on. And so, yeah, what was really exciting about that second iteration of Metal Martyr is that I said, in order to get people involved and in order to get people really on board with what I'm saying, I want them to get more into the work and be more part of the work. And that's when I started saying, okay, what if they could flip a switch? Or what if they could do a puzzle? Or how can I take this two-dimensional painting of this person and make it so that they can touch it? So that's, yeah, that was, and it doesn't bring levity to the subject necessarily, but it brings a level of excitement where you're not, oh, wow, this is a heavy subject, you know? You're approaching it with this whole different, a whole different part of your brain, and you're much more open. So you're getting the visual that's kind of, you know, a little bit of almost retro 50s, that kind of thing. I keep it very black and white. That's my little, you know, my little stick. And then I throw in there like a little bit of interactive quality to it. And suddenly now it's movement. And now, you know, now it's something that, you know, feels like you're empowered as the viewer, that you're doing something to promote advocacy, and you're there and you're learning. So that has been my new focus moving forward from Mettle, that everything needs to have some kind of interactive component. And that also helps bring up the serious quality of the work.
I mean, it's a very serious subject. And
yeah.
it was over the top, and you did your due diligence. I know how much, I mean, each time I had a conversation with our friend Dan Drossman, and we were like wide-eyed and like flabbergasted, because the first iteration, you did all that work in a very short period of time. The second one, you had a little bit longer, but still, I mean, usually when you go in, there's some space in the gallery. That gallery was full to the hilt. And it's like, how does someone create this much work in this amount of time? Also knowing, you know, a little bit about your personal life, having children and, you know, a partner, like, how do you do that? I mean, it was mind blowing. And we're talking like a lot, not just Dan and I, but a lot of other artists that were just kind of blown away, like literally shaking their heads in disbelief that somebody could create this much work in that short period of time.
Thanks. Yeah. It is a bit of a dog with the bone syndrome. I have to be careful of that now moving forward, because again, I can get really obsessed, and not in a, that word is overused, and that's not what I'm using it. I'm not using it in an overused way. I can get really into it. But, you know, thank you. Yeah, I love this. I love painting, and I love it so much. There aren't words. I've known that this is what I wanted to do since before I could talk. This is, I eat, breathe, sleep it. Everything I think about, everything I do in my life is revolving around this weird globby pigment and these canvases or wood panels or whatever, or pencils. I'm obsessed with it, and I love it so much. There is nothing better for me than like a Friday night listening to a fantasy novel on Audible and painting by myself. I mean, that is like, that's bliss for me. But yeah, I wanted so much to make sure everybody that wanted a voice for that show had a voice for that show. Like you said, I'm not a balance person. I really get into something and I do not let go until I feel like it is wrung out, strung out, you know. It is a hard thing for me too, because I don't know anybody that does what I do in the way that I do it. And it does make you feel a little bit like you're on the lonely island. Just, I know there's plenty of other realism painters, and I know there's plenty of other people that do work that, like, you know, that try to say the same things. But I think that's also part of how I'm able to make a living out of it, because even if I'm doing a small sketch of your kid for Mother's Day, which I do these like little 5x7 Mother's Day portraits for $100, And I have spent 5 hours on one of those. The idea is that I'm taking 2 hours, maybe, tops, and just knocking out a beautiful little sketch for somebody, and makes the artwork accessible, but it makes a beautiful gift and an heirloom piece that people can pass down, whatever. I can't just leave it at that, though, because I want, it must be right. It must be the best to my absolute ability. Like, it doesn't matter blood, sweat, tears. The work matters more. But that kind of limits you, and you're like, oh, so you didn't make, that much work, and you didn't spend that many hours on your last opening? What? Why? You get a little bit crazy, and you're like, oh, other people don't work like this. Oh, ooh, oops.
It's easy to set that bar that high, right? And then you feel like you have to come back and top that every single time, right?
Yeah. Yeah. But there is a level too that I think I'm figuring out about my own brain, that if I can bring in a learning aspect to the work, that I get a little less crazy, and making sure, I don't do quite so much two-dimensional painting, and I can learn a little more than I can get into the image in a different way. So that's also why I started bringing in the interactive components to work, because then, hey, if I want to spend 48 hours on a piece, that's great, but I'm also now learning how to solder. So, and then I'm not getting too crazy about, doing 5 sketches of one person or 10 sketches of one, or whatever, which I still sometimes do, but yeah. And that's kind of been, so I've been able to bring in kinetics into my more recent works, and that's been my new baby. And oh, what a troublesome little baby it is. But it's given me a little bit of that breathing room where I'm not quite so obsessed with my subjects, and not quite so crazy about, painting until 5 a.m. Because sometimes you have to let the glue dry, and you have to walk away, and that's good. So that's kind of the new thing.
This work that you've been doing is from the perspective of you being a woman living in America. Do you think it's a definitive American female, American woman scenario, or do you think it relates to all cultures around the world and what women experience?
Well, I want to say that there is an every woman quality. However, I would not presume upon another culture that, another aspect of the feminine experience that I haven't had personal experience with. And because I specifically draw and paint survivors, sometimes there is a cultural component. And I think that, with empathy, viewing through that gaze, you're able to, anybody can relate to that work. I don't want to presume that what somebody else experiences, that I've had any shadow of the same. So hopefully that has that what I do now has an every woman quality, and that but I also, like I said before, I also now in my titles I use statistics, so about safety, and I use statistics about things that I know as well. And that, again, I don't want to presume anybody else's experience, but I don't know, it'd be interesting. It'd be interesting to get the opinion of the work from somebody else who didn't have the kind of cultural context.
Yeah, I got this sneaking suspicion this is a human thing and not a cultural thing.
Probably. I'm pretty sure it is. But That is something that I always want to be very, very careful of, especially within advocacy, that if you are saying it, you better know what you're saying, you better know who you're saying it to, how you're saying it, because you don't want to be exclusionary in any way, shape, or form, but you also don't want to presume.
Right.
So, and that's, for instance, like, there was that big movement, late 80s, early 90s, of Western art that, a bunch of old white guys painting Native American chiefs. This sold really well, and there was like it was its own little niche of art, but it was kind of like, why are they doing that? They don't understand the perspective of these gentlemen. Even if the goal is to tell that story, maybe it's not your story to tell. So I always want to make sure that the work I'm doing is my story to tell,
right,
and that, I have permission and a thumbs up to tell that story, if that makes sense.
Sure.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah, I think that whole, and I'm going to put myself on the line here.
I'm going to
probably piss off some people. I think that attitude is a 21st century attitude of you can't paint my culture. But when I think of historically, let's say Ed Curtis, without those white gentlemen going across the prairie, we wouldn't have a lot of the images we have. I think people that are painting cultures, and I think there's a difference between painting a culture that you respect and or curious about, and painting a culture that you're making fun of. And there's a distinct difference. And so to say that people don't have the right to tell a story that's not theirs, I don't think that's true. I think we can tell the story as long as here's my limit. I can tell a story as long as I'm being respectful for that story. And part of being respectful is to gain knowledge and understanding. And, that maybe not is always the case, but I think we're in dangerous ground when we see it in Hollywood where, can't remember his name now, but he played the cross-dressing Dutch man. He was a man that dressed as a Dutch woman. Let me look it up. Anyway, he got a little bit of pushback and he felt bad about it. And I think he was telling a story and he did it in a respectful way, that it was hired to do it. And they wanted him to do it because he's a great actor. But he got so much pushback that he eventually, changed his mind to how he felt about it. And I think that's a shame. Once again, as long as you're playing it, it depends on the story, right? But I think if you're playing it respectfully and doing the best job you can, I think you have the ability to do it. I totally understand where people are coming from when they say, when I look at a film or I look at a painting or I look at a picture, I don't see myself in representation. I totally get that. So, anyway, that's my opinion for what it's worth. Not necessarily trying to push back on you, but it's an interesting conversation, if at least.
It is. It's funny because, okay, I'm portraitist. At the end of the day, everything that I do is primarily based within portrait. So this is something that is actually very, very near and dear to my heart and very much part of the conversation when you're trying to represent a lot of people and you want to do it in a way that makes sense and you want to do it in a way that feels, again, that you're not pushing people away, so on and so forth. I think this is where it gets really tricky for me. How do you monetize that? Like, that's where I get, that's where it gets tricky.
And that might be different. Yeah, that may be a little different. Yeah.
Especially, and this went with Mettle Martyr more. But some of these folks that posed for me, they gave me a lot of their stories. Some folks didn't want to give me their story and just gave me a few adjectives on, their perspective now versus, just little glimpses. And that's great too. All things are great. However, when you're looking at like those types of people, the folks that were giving me all of themselves, I did not make those prints available for sale, for instance. And I got written permission or verbal permission for them. Yeah, from everybody. If I wanted to make it into a print or if I wanted to do that, it's such a tricky line to walk.
Right.
Because you want to shine a light and you want to say, hey, this one, and have you seen it in this way, and have you seen it in this light? And that's the responsibility of the artist.
Right. And I totally makes sense, where you're like a little hesitant to make actually cash money value that will put bread on your table. Because this is their story you're telling, and now you're commercializing it. So now I sold a big 16 by 20 print to somebody in Massachusetts because they love the painting, and know the story, but they love the painting and they probably bought it. How does that change the look of, not the look, but how does that change the feel of, the commerce part of it from telling a story?
Oh,
yeah,
absolutely. It's funny we're talking about this. I was just one of the people that has most recently posed for me. We were just kind of touching on this, and their perspective was that I'm happy to help you make money because you're not only am I helping support your family and support you creating this message again, but then that person that takes home the image of me gets the little bit of my story. I feel like my truth is being more widespread, but it's being widespread in a way that's respectful because now we've exchanged goods, so now it's like, okay, I have this thing that says your story is valuable. You are valuable. Your image is valuable. This thing that was created and inspired by you is valuable. And that was that person's perspective. But it's a very tricky thing. And I think when you're using likeness, and again, this is where it's very easy when you're doing, this is a glimpse or a breath of a feeling. Sure. And those are beautiful paintings when you're doing, it's your abstract mindscape of, your experience, whatever. That's still, the work is still advocating just as much differently, but yeah. However, again, I think that I'm a good enough artist, and I'm a smart enough human, and I'm brave enough to handle these nuances of this. I don't trust everybody to do it, but I think I can do it.
Right.
Sometimes I just I get so frustrated with, because you can go this way on that or this way on that, this way on that, and you just want to do a good job and you just want to do the right thing. And at the end of the day, the woman with whom I'm working right now, she's the executive director at the Firehouse Art Center. And I think I texted her at like midnight and I said, I'm putting in my application at Walmart tomorrow. I can't do this anymore. This is just, my brain is going 1,000 miles an hour and it's going one way or the other way. And I'm talking myself into and out of this 1,000 times over. And her advice was just make it, just see what happens. And you'll know after you've made it, if it feels right or not. And yeah, but it is, it's when you're using someone's face, right. It's a tricky thing.
It is, and as long as you get permission and, whether it's written or verbal or however you want to do it, I think then it's fine. And I want to just real quickly, I want to put, the movie was called The Danish Girl, and the actor's Eddie Redmayne. He was the one who was getting
yes.
And he eventually apologized and felt bad about playing that role. But from everything that I could tell, he did a phenomenal job. So anyway, I just wanted to put that out there so people had context. So
there you go.
But I think you're right. I think it's a really hard thing to do when you're talking about something that horrific and that heart, wrenching experience that somebody has gone through, and then you're putting it out there. You're doing a beautiful job creating this piece, but now it's for sale. I mean, it's just like now it's for sale.
Yeah. Anybody? Right. Well, so. And I think too, and here's the tricky part. Again, a lot of these images I can kind of shift and turn into more of a conceptual portrait that is a little more commercially consumable. And then I can do one really in-depth study of one of my subjects. And I can kind of give that story the whole meaning. But, you know, I don't know. If you're unwilling to sell it a little bit, then I think you're also there's something to place a monetary value on something in our society does give it validation, unfortunately. So while maybe you make it for sale, I think just putting a price tag on it that says, yeah, it says how much, sure, that's shitty. But it also shows like this image has value. And it sounds so strange, but yeah. Anytime I put anything not for sale, it gets kind of, you know, maybe it's different experiences for other artists, but
here's a kind of the same idea where it became a huge commercial success. I'm going to butcher her name, but her name is Phan. I think it's Thai Kim Phuc. She's a Vietnamese girl that was running down the road with no clothes on after being attacked with napalm. And then you have Napalm 2004 by Banksy, using her image along with Mickey Mouse and Ronald McDonald, commercializing on a horrific experience that she had. You know, good, bad. I mean, I don't know. I feel, you know, when I saw it, it's definitely, you know, Banksy's painting, for lack of a better term, I guess painting. It's a powerful image, right? On commercialism and, you know, all that. But then when you put it in context of what we're talking about right now, like what you're doing, it makes you feel a little uncomfortable.
It most certainly does. Yeah. I think too, more recently, I've been to not just in my own whatever, not bringing it back to my story, but this is a lot of why grants are available. And doing this work in a more authentic way where your focus doesn't have to be on sales, that really opens the floor for something a little more exploratory and a little more in depth like that. And so if the work's already paid for, man, you can go nuts. So I think that is a really good approach and that's actually kind of the trajectory I've been on more recently, just applying for grants and that kind of thing. It's more of an academic approach to it. However, it does really, it's relieving to take that commercial aspect out of it. However, if we're having the conversation, then the art is doing its job.
Yeah.
The job of the art is to ask the question, not to answer the question. And the job of the artist doesn't, you know, we don't answer the question either. You're the vehicle. You're not the, you know, you're not the passenger. So, I think, but this is a really, really important conversation to have within portraiture. And again, like I always make this joke, but you go back to it. Sometimes music is a better analogy for people. And if you go back to, you know, story songs and is it unfair to tell someone's story through song, through poetry? Is that not okay? No, it's usually okay. You know, people are usually okay with it as long as it's meaningful and as long as it brings meaning to other people, then people are usually fine with it. So yeah, I think it's a question that needs to be asked always though, when you're creating something in someone else's image. And that's like, what is the, you know, I use words like, is it breathing? Is there breathing room there?
Mm-hmm.
Like, is this too much of that person? Is it too little of that person? Is it telling the story that person wants to be told? Or is it too much of your story? You know, it needs to have room to have that, And as long as there's room for those questions, then you're doing the right thing and you're making it the right way. When I'm doing my commission work, it doesn't work that way. That needs to be, that box needs to be checked, needs to look like that dog, whatever. Right. But yeah, I think it's the job too of a portrait artist. I mean, look at the controversy that Shepard Fairey has faced through the years.
Yeah.
And the endless lawsuits that he faces all the time.
Sure. So speaking of commission work, have you had very many people ask you to do commissions based on Mettle Martyr?
None whatsoever.
Really?
Yeah. However, commissions, it's been a really good year for commissions, actually.
Yeah.
So
what's your commissions basically entail now? What are you painting?
Primarily portrait. Yeah, it's usually portrait work. These days I'm dealing a lot more with folks dealing with loss. Oh. So that's kind of my jam. So, I've used this example, I think, with Todd before, but like one family came to me and they said, well, this is Uncle so-and-so, but in this photo, it was before he had his fake teeth put in. And we'd really like to show him with teeth. And we tried to do it in Photoshop and it looked terrible. And I'm thinking, duh. But so they gave me a picture of him with his teeth in and a little bit older. And then but they loved the look on his face in this particular photograph of when he was younger. So me as the artist, I can smoosh them together and I can make it look like Uncle Jim or whomever.
Right.
And he's got all his teeth.
Nice.
And yeah, and so they had that for the service. The tricky thing about that kind of portraiture, it's great because, again, I have no issue really diving deeply into the work and getting really technical with it. So my turnover rate can be really quick, but that's the drawback, is that that especially when you're dealing with loss, you've got 3 days, and that thing needs to be polished, finished, varnished, framed, ready to rock, ready to go. 80, 90 people are going to see it.
So you're doing mortician work, funeral home work, not mortician, funeral home work for the service. Oh my God. I didn't even think about doing that. My mom just died like a year ago. Do you want to do a portrait of her? I'm just kidding. So what do you charge? And not necessarily about that, but your commission work in general, like what do you charge? Is it by size? Is it okay?
I do per square inch. And then if it's really technically tricky, I can bring that up. But 90% of the time I don't, because again, and then a lot of like pets that have passed away too. I do that too. Sure. And I know people say that like, no, I don't want to paint a picture of your dog. And they make it sound awful. I will tell you what, there's nothing more satisfying to me than bringing someone a sliver of joy in a hard moment. And losing a pet can just be absolutely devastating. So on those people. Right. And I have had the most backhanded, snide comments. People will say like, oh, you did it. And I'm like, you bet. Those are the most appreciative clients ever. But yeah, typically I do per square inch. And there's only been one time where I had to come back and say, I have to make this bigger. This is too much detail and too small of a space, and I can't do the image justice.
Right.
So, but most of the time I can manage it.
So what do you charge per square inch? Do you want to divulge that, or is that something you want to keep
personal?
I
mean, usually I start at about like a 5x7, usually pencil sketch. And then I start at $100 for that. And then after that, I think it goes up $1, or no, what do I do? 70 cents a square inch after that. So
that's really reasonable.
It is. Thank you. Yeah. And again, I think that at the end of the day, the reason I can make a good living doing this is because I don't charge so much. And I know that a lot of people would say you're not charging what you're worth. Yeah, I could charge $1 million, but then how many people would not have my art in their homes.
Right.
And I find that to be, if I go after that being the baseline of my approach, then, because those folks that, I got to be with you in your time of crushing, stress that, grandma just passed away, you're planning the funeral, this, that, the other. You don't want to go to Kinko's to blow up a photo of her. You want something more meaningful. You come to me, grandma's there on her motorcycle, driving, whatever. I just did that one over Christmas, grandma on the motorcycle.
Nice.
And then that person comes to the show. That person comes to the show, they buy a print, then they talk to me about their friend that's experienced the thing that I'm making art about, and that friend comes and she poses for me, and da 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 da.
Right.
And that's the relationship I want to have. Those are the humans I want to invest in, because they're investing in me. And I think that when you approach your business like that, people see it. But typically I'm not charging over $500 for a portrait.
Right.
That seems crazy. But then I can get them done really quickly too. So that's also part of it.
Do you do portraits of people that aren't going to die or aren't dead?
Thank God. Yeah.
That's good.
And while I deal a lot with loss, and I will say, like, literally about 9 out of 10 of my clients are folks dealing with loss.
Wow.
Kids, I get to paint kids.
Oh,
and
that's fun.
That is a joy. That is a joy.
Yeah.
I love that. And people are usually really into my crazy ideas. One of them, I had the kids color all over the canvas in washable marker, and then I did a little bit of a spray of water over it and made that kind of the toned background on it. So it kind of looked like it was tie-dyed, but the kids got to be part of their painting. So yeah, fun stuff like that.
That's great. I think that's fantastic. I mean, who wouldn't want a drawing and A.L. Lummus drawing of, of their kid, right?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I love it. And I love those things mean so much more than, I don't know, a blender or something like they're almost always gifts. So, yeah, they're like, hey, I'm getting this for my wife, or I'm doing this for my husband for this, and those, because they're gifts, it's always that much more meaningful too. So, and I love drawing kids. I know that a lot of people hate it, but in terms of portraitists, everybody loves an interesting face. We love like lines and folds and angles, but give me a squishy baby any day. Those are fun.
So have you always been drawn to portraiture?
I have, and I don't know why. I think it has to do with the storytelling aspect, and I listen a lot to books as well as read a lot of books. So I usually have a book I'm reading physically and a book I'm listening to, and then I read to my kids every night. Everybody gets their own books, so we've got those ongoing stories as well. But I think we talked about this last time. My parents were actors, and prior to being parents, but that's still very much in them. I think that storytelling for me is the way I communicate with the world, and the way the world communicates with me best too. So I love story. I just love it. So portraits always told stories for me. And yeah, I don't know about you guys, but whenever I see something just knocked out of the park, I start to just, their story comes into play. Oh my God. Oh, she's fabulous. She's walking. I can feel it. I can feel the wind in her hair. She's feeling herself today. And it's this very posh portrait and very wispy and loose. And And with each stroke, you feel her strut, as she moves down the street or whatever. And I think that's that power. Ooh, that power of telling a story through just a stroke, just a that, I don't know. I love it.
Kenneth wants to acknowledge our media sponsor, New Magazine. That's N-U-E. You can follow both the national and the Denver edition of New Magazine on Instagram. The national edition can be found at new_magazine, and the Denver edition at new_Denver_magazine. And I want to share with you something very exciting. Check out the newly launched New Denver Gallery Guide. Look for the signage that says New Denver Gallery Guide that has a QR code. Scan it with your phone, and you have instant access to a comprehensive digital guide to Denver's finest galleries and exhibitions. Find this QR code in your favorite gallery, hotel, or coffee shop as you visit and explore Denver. Thanks for listening.
I'm A.L. Lummus, and you're listening to the Tenet Podcast.
As your work has evolved, and we talked about, you touched on it and kind of gave us some facts earlier. Do you still do the research that you did for the whole Mettle Martyr series?
So yeah, I kind of touched on it and I didn't really elaborate on that at all. So each painting is titled with a statistic about the safety of American women and whether that, how many carcinogens are in makeup, or what have you. Oh, there you go. 70% of women believe having children would do irreparable harm to their career. They're right. First-time mothers see on average a 30% loss in wages. Yeah. So, I still think that that's a really important component of the work. And I think that also shows how seriously I take what I consider advocacy, because you can talk about how you feel all day, but until you sit there for 5.5 hours and really get into the nitty gritty of there's a big difference between facts and feelings. And again, when you're making art in order to shed light onto something, it needs to be a real something that you're shedding light on. I've been accused multiple times now, which is awesome. Bring it on. I love it, that I'm making this up.
Really?
Yeah.
Who says that?
2 women say it to me at shows.
2 women?
Like opening night, yes. Yeah.
So not guys, but actually women.
No, women. Yeah. And the one that was, you don't know what you're talking about. That was one of the, you don't know what you're talking about. You must be making this up. And, yeah. So actually, with the second iteration of Mettle Martyr, I also did an entire bibliography and a little book with all of the work, all of the facts, and all of the citations. And that way there would be no question. But yeah, the research component, I think, also shows like I can get my, I'm willing to put my skin in the game. And I'm putting it all out on the table. Like there's nothing left to say about this. This is exactly what this looks like. And it's not just my feelings. These are facts and this is real. And I'm not alone. And neither are you. So I think that bringing that validity to the table, though, it really gives people that kind of foundation where they feel like, okay, yeah, I'm not, this is real. Okay. I had one woman at the last one, she was crying so hard and I felt so bad. But she said that she didn't know that other people shared her experience, I guess. So those are good things for people to see. It's like authentic data and not just like camaraderie, I guess.
I think what makes it hard for people to believe it's real is the numbers are so astronomical.
Yeah.
I mean, when you first read, 90% of the women, at one time or another is going to have experienced sexual assault or domestic violence. That's just like, I can't even fathom that. Like, that doesn't even make sense to me.
Yeah.
So that would mean 90% of the women that I've met in my lifetime have had some sorts of sexual abuse or domestic violence. And I can't wrap my head around that.
That's a toughie.
And I know it's not all that, like you said, it's the toxicity of products in makeup, so there's a lot of different things you're talking about.
Yeah. And there's certain things that I advocate for, but I think that once I did the research, I started seeing the pattern of this immense social bias against half of the world. I mean, it's like this just doesn't make any sense. Women drive 80% of the retail market. We buy everything. Why is it that ad campaigns are only, what is it? Something I saw another staggering statistic the other day. It was something like 88, and I might be lying, so I'm pretty sure because now I have the mind for it. But I think she said 88% of ads show women in either scantily clad, like very little clothing, or in their underpants. And that didn't surprise me a bit.
Mm-mm.
I'm like, I don't want to see other women in their underpants. I mean, maybe some women do, and that's good for you, babe. But like, and so far as like at Target, I don't. Like,
right.
I don't know. It's an interesting phenomenon that we still, even the way we buy, even the way we approach everything, is that, women are not yet quite considered full-blown human beings yet. It'll happen. The experts assume that gender parity, parity, I think, which means like that we won't even really think twice about somebody's gender, that has about another 100 years.
Interesting.
So here's an interesting flip, though. Women and men who go on to get advanced college degrees is overwhelmingly women.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Overwhelmingly women.
There's a disconnect there, right? Like,
Yeah.
you got all these women that are becoming educated and getting themselves into positions of power,
Mm-hmm.
but yet the advertising industry has not caught up with that. We're still stuck back in the, 40s, 50s, whatever, 60s, and it hasn't evolved. I mean, I guess the bottom line is that they're still saying that sex sells, right? I mean, that's why you're seeing women in, scantily clad outfits or their underwear.
Oh, sure. Well, and this is an interesting thing. I think it is changing culturally. So I do want to give space for that, because I think that right around the time of the pandemic, there was a lot of social unrest, and I think a lot of women are really, really trying to take back that power. So the narrative is shifting, and I do want to give credit to, gentlemen like yourself who are right there and saying, no, thanks. Like, no, thanks. I don't want to watch that, look at that, be part of that, but in terms of just even the way we approach not just ads, I mean, God, it's medicine. It's in the way even every product that you use for your hands, technical products, they're designed around men's hands. Cars. Women are 40% more likely to die in car accidents in the United States. And why? Is because we do not require female crash test dummies to be put in the driver's seat of a vehicle when they're crash testing vehicles. And when they do put a female crash test dummy in it, it reflects less than 14% of the American female population. The crash test dummy is 5'4" and 114 pounds. That is the size of my 13-year-old daughter. Like, that's not real. You might as well just not bother. And a lot of car manufacturers don't, because they don't have to. There's no law in the United States of America that makes it, you don't have to put a female in the driver's seat. So as a result, women are 40% more likely to die in a car accident than men. That's insane to me. Yeah. There's staggering data like that you just look around and you're like, what? And then you start to see the pattern of, well, okay, no wonder that this kind of hush hush, part of the female experience, this like kind of everybody gets knocked around or forced into a situation that they feel deeply uncomfortable with. No wonder that that's part of the American female experience. And this one blows my mind, just to give you another really staggering, ugly one. American women are more likely to be burned, beaten, or stabbed than they are to receive flowers on Valentine's Day.
That's insane.
In their lifetime, yeah. Doesn't that blow your mind?
I'm going to pull up a piece, and I think this is from your first Mettle Martyr, but this is issue number 18. And I loved how you had these, in addition to the statistics, you also have these,
Little
quirky,
one-liners.
fun one-liners, right?
Yeah.
And this particular one, it's issue number 18. It says, "I don't approve of sexist political jokes. I've seen too many get elected." And then you have these statistics. Women are 51% of the population in the U.S., but make up only 24% of the U.S. Senate, 27% of the U.S. House of Representatives, 30% of statewide elected executives, 31% of state legislative seats, 23% of mayors in cities with population over 30,000, and 0% of presidents of the United States. That's an interesting fact. Have you tracked how much time you spent on research in addition to actually, painting these pieces?
No. Oh, I should have, though, shouldn't I?
I'm just curious.
This is one of those things, too, that I need to get a hold of, a college student who has maybe a little more, that's on my budget, within my budget or something like that, or somebody who's, enjoys writing statistics and fact checking, to put these stats, these paintings, and the funnies, the jokes, because they're awesome too, and compile everything from the first Mettle Martyr series. That was 38 pieces, and the second Mettle Martyr series, which was 65 pieces. I even went so far as to do my own research for the second iteration of Mettle Martyr, because I got a backhanded comment about, again, how statistics can be messed up and skewed and whatever. So I was like, well, sure, all right, if that's your commentary about this art I worked really, really hard on, I will then make my own damn study. So I did my own damn study, and I got about 100 women to take a quiz, and I used that data to title, I think, 20 of the pieces from the second iteration of Mettle Martyr. So I even had really raw data from women in our community that, like that kind of like real feedback. So there wasn't any question. It was real data from women right here, right now, that I could back it up a little bit.
So how much of the percentage of, let's say, when you say people in the House, people in the Senate and all that, how much of it is men's fault and how much of it is women's fault?
I don't know. This is a really interesting question, because how do we learn? We learn, like I always say, from story, right? And how do most Americans consume story? Through television and film. In television and film, men are given they speak 3 times as much on average on screen than women do. One of the pieces talks about this as well. I wish I could just rattle it off and say it's issue number, blah, 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 but my brain isn't that cool. They speak 3 times as much as women do on screen. And what's the other thing? It's it's about, again, women being fully clothed on screen. Women are going to the movies on average like 60% more. They're buying tickets to go to movies. So when we talk about culturally, I don't even think we know how to make an authentic shift. And I don't think that it's not the fault of men at all. I think it is people in power. And I think that the power structure works for them. And so they want to maintain that. And there's big reasons for that kind of thing. However, yeah, I think it's so ingrained that in our culture that I don't know if we even know that we're doing it. There was one that I did from the last Mettle Martyr series regarding the American family, though, that how much the fabric of the family landscape has changed and shifted, especially in the last 20 years. And it said something to the effect of like, most American families, and I forget the exact number, but it was essentially saying most American families no longer feel that big gender role, those like separation of gender roles in the home. They feel it more from society. And that was like within like the work-life balance, within this. And there was like, so the good news is that we've been teaching our sons and daughters that this isn't the right way. Mm-hmm. So things are changing, you know, they are changing, but that we still feel that outside pressure. So that was an interesting statistic to see that I was like, okay, so we get it, but we're not collectively ready to make the shift. To everybody say, well, let's just toss this shit out the window. Let's just, approach everybody the same.
Right.
We're still holding on to a few, the vestiges of the extreme patriarchy. But yeah, there's hope. I think there's real.
For sure. There's always hope. Yeah.
Well, you gotta have hope.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the statistics also reflect that, which is really good. That is also a good part of doing that research. Is that if I just sat here listening to every story from every woman that had some rough shit to tell me, I think I would hate it. But because I do that extra step and because I do that little bit of research, I can also see this is improving. Even from the first iteration of Mettle Martyr to the second. And that's crazy too. That's awesome. That I could find much more, hopeful statistics than I could the first time through.
Yeah. So here's another, and I'll quit with the statistics just because I have it at my fingertips. So we're in an election year, right? And if you remember the last time Trump ran against Clinton, the majority of non-college educated white women, 64% of them voted for Trump, while only 35% of them backed Clinton. The figure is far higher than non-educated black women, which was only 3% of the vote for Trump, and Hispanic women made up 25% of the vote for Trump. And now we face another election year with Trump running against Biden. No women. Well, there could be a woman if Haley gets in.
Haley.
Yeah. If she gets in. So we'll see. But yeah. Now we got two old 80-some octarian white guys running again. And it's just like, oh my God. Will this ever change? So
right. And I think that, the demand is like we're all so ready for it. We're all so ready for the baseline to shift.
Yeah.
It's the rest of us have all moved on. Like we're ready. I don't know, this is a hard one because what you're saying is that there are female, sexist pigs, and there are. Most certainly. It's the hardest thing to see when you look at the statistics. Roughly 30% of American women feel that it's justified for men to beat their wife in certain situations. What?
That's crazy.
Right.
Yeah.
And again, in the reverse too, I would never say it's okay to beat your husband either. I just don't think the fallout of physical violence should never be the way. However, if you don't go about it with the guise of empathy, that there has to have been something there has to have been something horrible that happened to that person to lead them to those conclusions, then, you know, maybe that's when you have to be the artist and paint your picture of them. And maybe it's not true, but if it helps you empathize, why not? Take some time, make them your new best friend in your own brain, I guess, you know. And that's the only way that you can get past it, that there must have been something terrible that happened to them to make them be that angry and to feel that way and to vote that way and to be that, I don't know. I think we're all just holding on for dear life, and the to convince anybody that you don't have more in common with your neighbor than you would like a political leader, that's folly, you know. That's somebody giving you a script that's not actually true. And yeah, hopefully people will do that. But yeah, women are some of the worst enemies of you know, the furtherance of their culture. I heard so many folks say too, like the Barbie movie, I heard so many women say that they hated it.
Yeah. I didn't see it, so my wife did, and she really enjoyed it, and my granddaughter really enjoyed it. So
yeah, it's a lovely way to say we see you, we hear you. And that's it. I think it was, and I think that it celebrated all facets, which was lovely. It was pleasant, you know. And hearing some women like bash on it, I'm like, what else? It was like the, I call it the slow pitch. That was like the slowest pitch, you know, like was like nothing bad. Like what problem did you have? She told him he was enough, you know, like I don't get it. They didn't do anything very controversial at all, but I hear it was like, oh.
I wonder if all the women that had like negative comments about Barbie, how many of them actually seen it? It might be the syndrome where I read the headline and I have an opinion and I throw it out there even though I haven't read the article, kind of thing.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Right. That's not wrong. But, you know, at the end of the day, we adopt the values of our oppressors in order to alleviate our own oppression. And that's the thing, is typically that's the people that you're like, oh my God, you're so ignorant. It's not usually that. It's the ardent attempt to no longer be silenced and feel worthless. And so they're grasping at straws. And yeah, I don't know. I wish I could put a better spin on it, but then I just started going into Supreme Court in my head, and I was like, nope.
You said earlier that you really don't know anybody that's doing the kind of work that you do. Well, specifically what you do. But do you think artists are doing a good job when it comes to making statements about our society and culture?
That's a really good question, Todd. Do I feel like some are. This is a really good question because I have this talk with colleagues a lot. I have this talk with people a lot. And I also, interestingly enough, now I have suddenly a teenager in my home. It's crazy. She wasn't supposed to grow up. But if it isn't saying something, if it is just pretty is wonderful. Pretty is good, but that's decoration. To be art, you must somehow raise a question. And there is nothing wrong with pretty decorations. But there is nothing right about pretending that is high art, you know? So while I would say that I know that there are many artists attempting to make bold statements and move society in a direction that is more empathetic and is more open, and we're always asking the hard questions that need to be asked. There are just as many artists willing to make pretty things, and that is okay. But if you are really committed to your craft, one must ask the question, is this pretty or is this art? And they can be one and the same, but they can't really be, is it decoration? You know? I always go back to that question. Is it breathing? Is there breathing room in there? Are you taking a minute to go, you know? If there's no breathing room in it, I don't know. I want very much to meet more artists in the Denver area that are doing work that says something, though. I very much want that. I would love that. I have met them and you know, there are artists that are doing that, but while art can be interesting and introspective, I would love to see a little more like, let's promote this social change, or let's advocate hard for whatever, you know. I don't see as much of that as I would like, but that's probably going to be with anybody in any community.
I'm going to pull up another image here, and this was one of my favorites from Mettle Martyr II. Talk about this piece. I love this piece. I don't know why, but I just do. It really like.
Thanks. Well, this is one of those that I got to really play with some surrealism. That hat is my great grandmother's. The model, yeah, it's just so much fun. I kind of brought it up that I said, I wanna, you're so classically pretty. Can I put a skull in the middle of your face? And I loved it. I'm kind of starting to shift away from skulls now, just because I think, you know, that was what I was interested in then. But putting a skull in a way that, like, I don't know, the cigarette, the whole thing. I don't know. It's nice to put a really pretty girl with something so morbid. But those juxtapositions are exactly like what gives it that, you know, a little edge. And again, that kind of can give it a little commerciality. Is that a good word? Is that a
sure? Why not? I like it.
Sellability that it kind of changes somebody into more of an every woman figure rather than a portrait of a particular person. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I try to get people that want to give me everything. So sometimes if my model is into it, I usually do not photography. I just snap a bunch of pictures with everything handy, from my camera on my phone to my iPad to my, you know, to the actual camera I have, you know, and just go crazy. And if my model's into it, I'll take, you know, I can shoot for like 3 hours. But this particular model didn't have much time. And so I actually ended up getting this like right at the end of our session, and she was having a smoke break. And I liked it a lot better. And there's such stoicism, you know. I don't know.
Yeah, it's great.
So what's the name of this piece?
This one is issue 49. Women aged 15 to 44 are more at risk from rape and domestic violence than from cancer, car accidents, war, and malaria combined. And the joke I put with that one was women are not machines you put kindness coins into until the sex falls out. That's funny, you guys. It's kind of funny.
It is funny, but poignant too. So it makes you go, interesting.
Yeah.
So how did this piece, I mean, this is really a bizarre piece. How did this, I mean, I know in the thing it says, folks are asking for more skulls, and ask and you shall receive. But like, this is a really bizarre portrait. So talk about like what was going through your head, if you can remember, like, absolutely. I'm trying to figure this out.
When I do these surrealistic pieces, what I do is I print out the reference of my model about 4 or 5 times.
Mm-hmm.
And I really, really like straight lines. So when I start, and then I cut them up. So I cut squares typically. I don't know if you guys have noticed how obsessed I am with squares. But so this was actually, I cut the piece of paper a bunch of different ways, but I really liked, so there's actually quadrants of her face. So like one eyeball, the other eyeball, her chin, lips, and sunglasses, her chin, lips, and sunglasses. And then I printed out a picture of a skull that had its mouth open, and I put it behind it. So it was like a collage piece, kind of. And then I made that my reference. So I draw from that.
Nice.
It is rather absurd because that's how like the squares that I'd been doing kind of started. I told you I print out so many different references of, the same image or maybe slightly different image. And that's how a lot of my square patterns started coming up, because I had scraps. And then I was like, well, I got all this. Oh, that's kind of fun,
Mm-hmm.
But this is right when I started getting into cutting things into squares or splitting things into fours. I really like that number for no reason. But I think there is a lovely juxtaposition between a very youthful subject and a very morbid image. But I think, bones are just so elegant and beautiful anyway, especially when you're trying to call attention to like that statistic, for instance, that you show something kind of morbid, and there's that fascination that, she's so pretty and petite and, smooth skin, and then underneath her there's that. So but there is, I think, something too, that there's that precious quality, that nothing is precious and yet everything is precious. And if we don't treat it like that, I don't know, the fleeting, the fascination of our mortal lifespan, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But there's still that kind of shatter pattern that I use with the lines. I only ever draw in straight lines until the very, 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 very end, or I paint in straight lines. And that the reason for that, and so with the previous iteration of Mettle Martyr and this one, and in my work moving forward, all of those lines really help the eye move across the canvas or the composition in the way that I want it to, and it adds this nice little design quality as well. But those little shatter patterns came from leaving kind of the remnants of my sketches on the canvas and then going back over those sketch remnants. And the way that I map, I call it mapping, the way that I map my image on my canvas or whatever substrate I'm using, is I don't do a grid pattern or a scribble grid or anything like that, unless I'm doing like a mural or something. But I do this kind of weird quadrant thing. Again, 4, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's where all those little crazy lines are coming from, because they're giving me references on where they intersect and where something else is happening on the page. So I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. No, it totally does. Yeah.
So all of those weird little shatters are actually my references to myself making X's. That's where this goes, and that's where that goes, and that's where that intersects.
Well, I think that's what makes your pieces so unique and interesting, is the sketch part, or the lines. I love all that style that you got.
Oh,
with
thank you.
this. Like, I would do a self-portrait of myself if I could have that, because it is so freaking interesting. And it does make your eyes move.
Well, thank you. Yeah. This is I'm glad you say that. Thank you. I'm glad I get to bring it up too, because I talk to, whenever I have to teach a class, and through the Firehouse, I've been teaching a few classes. And when I'm talking about realism, and especially within the human figure, you just leave behind any kind of curves, and people get like really frustrated with me say that. But, you know, again, our eyes only move in straight lines. Our eyes do not move in curves. So in order to properly control the human eye, you really do have to consciously direct the eye. And so how you go about that, those are your choices. But if you are trying to be as realistic as possible, you actually have to jump away from being as photorealistic as possible in order for the human eye to perceive it as hyper-realistic. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's a weird phenomenon, but yeah, it's like, what do they call it? The uncanny valley or something silly like that. But like, in order to make it look the most realistic, you actually make it less realistic.
Well, that's one of the most important things about composition too, especially, well, I'll say in photography, since that's what I know, is you want to bring the viewer into a specific area. You do it with leading lines. You know, maybe it's a diagonal fall of a tree into a river or something. That's how you get the person to look at what you want them to look at. And that's great composition. So along with other things.
Thanks. Yeah. Well, and that's tricky within portraiture, especially with like that composition in particular. It's straight on. So again, just like you said, you have to do it within that kind of narrow scope of a face, which is tricky. And with photography, you have to do it that with light. And with painting, you get a little more leeway because you can kind of like cross hash your lines, or, you know, you can make one big fat stroke one way or one big fat stroke another way. But yeah, I love those technical challenges too. You know, I just love that. And getting the viewer, like I said, it's kind of like a godlike feeling. You know?
Right.
I can tell you exactly what I want to tell you with this image. I can tell you the story I want you to feel. Mm-hmm. And whether or not you're telling the story word for word in your head, that feeling, I gave you that. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Earlier, you mentioned murals. Is that something new for you?
New-ish. I started doing murals many, many years ago, a lot for private clients. So I ended up doing a lot of nurseries, you know, and again, we're not talking high art at all. These are like quick, I'm in, I'm out, you know, spend 3 hours doing a commission, you know, I'm going to paint a quick mermaid on somebody's wall, whatever. It's all very pretty, but, you know, and prior to that, I'm out here talking about how you need to challenge your art, you know, whatever. But end of the day, we all got to eat. So, yeah. So I used to do a lot for nurseries. I did a lot for like small businesses, like logos on walls, that kind of thing. And then I kind of fell off on doing that. And then just this summer, I got accepted to the Fort Collins Mural Project, which again, there are almost squares. That's a group of people that just talk about people being so damn committed to just being wonderful human beings. I had walked away from my experience with Mettle Martyr just feeling very drained, and I was having a hard time getting my ferocity back, my like energy for the work, and my commitment to making money doing this anymore. It was just felt all so exhausting. But I threw my hat into the Fort Collins Mural Project, and I'll be damned. It was such a wonderful thing to be around artists that take you seriously and that encourage you, and that just it was just a very different landscape than I had been used to with a lot of my Denver colleagues, and there was just it wasn't competitive, and that was a really great thing about doing something like that, is that all of us are all working all over the streets of Fort Collins doing these murals, but we all got accepted. And so that competition aspect was out the window. And, sharing paint, sharing brushes, sharing techniques, all of that, it was eye-opening. And the folks that run that, it's 100% all proceeds that they make. It's completely volunteer based that works for the Fort Collins Mural Project. So every penny goes back to the artists, and they have some absolutely stunning work. And I got to meet some really incredible human beings, and just what a great group of people. I can't say enough about them.
So this mural that we're looking at here, where is that located in Fort Collins?
That's on 327 Remington. So it's an apartment building, and it's privately owned. But I got this I had a model pose for me, and she was wonderful and adorable. And I wanted to give that pop of color because I was doing black and white, and I was doing a combination of brush, mostly brush. This is primarily brushed, and then a little bit of shading with the can. She was so great. She gave me everything. The tricky thing, what you can't see in this photo, is that there's a rock slope right there. And that actually came out. So right there, the rocks down there at the bottom of the mural, those were at about a 45-degree angle. Oh. So I actually every day had to dig trenches for the ladders. And you couldn't get scaffolding because that actually comes out 5 feet. So that mural is actually it's not, I think the end of it was 17 foot. So that's actually like a 5 foot thing at a 45-degree angle. Oh my God, it sucked. So I was spending half of the morning, the first 2 hours of the morning, raking rocks, and then I'd have to rake them back into place. So, the parking lot would be accessible that night. And oh my God, but it was a really good learning experience. And especially the more experienced muralists that, they only do mural competitions, that they were saying, this is treacherous as hell. This is going to be one of the worst ones you'll ever have to do. So that was good. Holy cow, trying to blend on a ladder, your ladder's wobbling in the wind. It was just, but there's the people that volunteer for the Fort Collins Mural Project were taking the day, taking the morning off of work to come help me rake rocks and stuff. I mean, just a truly incredible group of people, and really committed to the betterment of the arts and the betterment of their community and bringing folks together. It was just, it restored my faith in, I won't say humanity. It was just everybody. Everybody made me feel all warm and gushy inside. It was the best.
Nice. So overall, a great experience, even though it was difficult.
It was hard as hell. Yeah, it was so scary. I've never been so scared on a ladder. I'm not afraid of heights. And I was like, oh my God, I'm going to fall down. But yeah. Just overall, really great experience. I'm so glad they picked me, and it's super competitive. They get something like 500 entries every year. So I was really blessed that they picked me, and really, really glad that I got to, the young lady that posed she was just ferocious, and she was so fun to work with, and yeah, all around phenomenal experience.
Yeah, it's very cool. And it's beautiful. It's a
Yeah.
beautiful
Thank you.
mural.
Thank you.
And your artwork really, I think, lends itself to murals. I mean, this is a very interesting looking piece, you know, because of the squares and, you know, the different aspects of her face. I think your style really lends itself to murals that I don't see in other people's work.
Thank you. Yeah, I loved painting big. It was great. I really feel like I could have done an even more, I guess, hyper realistic job. I won't say better job because I liked how it came out, but yeah, I was so shaky on those ladders that I felt like I wasn't able to give it like everything. So I look forward to the opportunity to work that big again, and to take, so thank you for saying as much, because I would love to take an image similar to this with the same approach, maybe a few blooms, a few little like vinies, and then really give it that like what I feel is my strength, that really like ferocious female gaze, all my little crazy squares, and then, you know, with 2 feet like on a boom or on the ground would be cool.
Boom would be
or
good,
even
right?
just not on a 45-degree angle. That was the hardest part, because it was
Right.
it was so sloped that the ladders, you couldn't get a normal ladder up there. That was the hardest part.
Is it hard to take a painting like that and make it big? It seems like that would be, you know, for scale. And I know there's tricks and, you know, people use grids and, you know, that kind of stuff, but it just still seems like it would be hard to do.
There are some that are easier. Like it's very site specific. So you can see when I was mapping things in, and you can see where like jerry rigging one ladder to hold the paint, and then so in order to get things, and again, I always go back to, like, especially now that I've been teaching a little more, it just needs to look like a person and needs to feel like your subject. And once you have that, then it becomes a lot easier. But I used an alphabet grid, like a scribble grid. I used the alphabet. It went pretty well. It was just, like I said, those slopes were really scary. But working that big realistically definitely has some serious challenges to it.
Mm-hmm.
If I were to do it again, I would probably get like a crazy, oh yeah, that happened because of my crazy jerry rigging of things on ladders.
Oh, you dropped your paint can.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I would probably just go rent myself a boom.
Right.
Because but you know, in that site, it was just the kind of boom that they would have needed for that would have been crazy expensive. But
Sure.
Working that big, yeah, it's tricky. You can do it digitally and try to even it out, but when you're using those digital formats to kind of like palimpsest your sketch onto the image of the wall, even then there's that shift that happens,
right?
A plane shift. So you can't emulate the grid the right way. It won't come out exactly like you sketched it.
Right.
So either way, I think if I did it again, I would probably just sketch it from scratch. I don't know if I would use a grid because I think I'm a good enough renderer that I wouldn't have had. I think the grid actually ended up messing me up in the long run.
Interesting. Well, I'll tell you what, you use the alphabet grid, and that just doesn't even make any sense to me. I mean, I probably understand it, like how it works, but when I see that, it's just like, well, this doesn't even make sense. So describe the alphabet grid compared to, let's say, you know, a normal grid or a scribble grid. I mean, that's even worse, I think, but go ahead.
Well, for me, the alphabet grid works better because I can say, okay, this line crosses the F midway through the top line of the F. Whereas a scribble grid, that can get kind of shifty in your mind.
Right.
And I think that if you use something familiar, I've also seen it done with like shapes, like triangle, square, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like the alphabet because there's enough of it's familiar enough, and then it also has enough of
like variety or whatever.
Exactly that. Yes, that your brain doesn't get all wonky with it.
Right. Yeah. And like I said, I think I understand how it works, but when I see, like, we're looking at a picture of like an early rendering of it, and she's got alphabet letters all over the wall, and you can find it on her Instagram, but it just like makes my brain hurt thinking about, okay, how am I painting this now with all these letters here? So anyway, that's why you're the artist and I'm not.
Well, yeah. It was, what was the most interesting part was I had a gentleman who I think he lives outdoors. I don't know. But he didn't want anything from me at all. He would just come help hand me paints sometimes, and he would share my lunch with me on occasion and just sit and chat with me. And it was so nice because, I was so scared on that ladder, and he would come hold the bottom of the ladder and just, say crazy things. It was great. I really enjoyed his company.
Oh, that's so funny. He would say crazy things. Amy, if I was to come and hold your ladder, I'd say crazy things too. So
it was helpful at the time, especially because he saw that I was, I think this photograph in particular shows you how steep that slope was on that wall. Right. And I was freaked out.
And just for the record, Amy, I will hold your ladder anytime you want. So just saying.
I'll take you up on that.
Just call me.
Well, hopefully the next mural will have scaffolding. The next one is for a school, so hopefully that goes off without a hitch, and there will be physical scaffolding there. And I'll be doing it off-site and then I'll be doing it on wood off-site and then bringing it into the space.
Oh, wow.
So,
okay.
Yeah, that will be great.
Right. Yeah. Hey, you talked about how inspirational it was to work big, and obviously you have another mural lined up, but did it get you kind of jazzed to go big again, like you did with your previous work, like bending the iron?
Yes. So I'm so glad you bring that up. Thank you. That is something that, again, when I was talking about making your work accessible and making it, consumable and accessible for everybody, not just the very rich, I had to start really scaling down. And again, when we're talking about stroke and direction of composition, you really lose, when you scale down, you really lose that full body interpretation of an image. And I absolutely love the ability to fully express through your body onto an image. It's Amy Cuddy talks about, she's a sociologist, and she's the one that came up with Superwoman pose and starfish pose. Have you ever heard of those? It's the brain trick. You trick your brain into thinking that you're very confident even when you're very nervous, and you do kind of like a power pose.
Oh, okay.
And that tricks you into it. She talks a lot about how we move our bodies, and I think that there is a huge confidence boost that you get from working big and expressively, and it really allows you that, when you can stroke with your whole arm rather than just your wrist, it really gives you an idea of the mechanics in a way throughout your body that, just sketching on, something small will never authentically give you. It's so working big has like, it's, it has that cathartic quality for your mind. And then it also has that, real intentionality with, the technical skills developing, and painting big literally will make you happier. That's like, so the neuroscience shows it. There's all that stuff. There's research behind it. So that is, at the end of the day, that's the reason to do it. But it can make your work rather inaccessible for your average Joe. So it's kind of, it's catch-22, but I'd love to do it again. And especially when you work with nonprofits like the Fort Collins Mural Festival, you don't have to worry so much about, a specific client, because they're the intermediary between the person that owns the wall. So you don't have to do that dirty work of convincing, the sales portion of it, Yeah, that's nice.
So we'll see more work,
Yeah,
more canvases along the lines of that bend the iron work.
I would love to work big again. The hard thing is that we're getting limited on room to store a lot of if it doesn't sell. But I would really like to spend my summers doing more of these mural commissions. So pushing a little harder for those. And also, any artist can do it. You just call your local city government and you ask them what's on the docket, and ask them if they have any public art projects planned and if you can do the proposal for them. And it's really easy. I called our local city and they said, yeah, same thing. They were like, this is when you need to have it in. This is when you need to do it. It was that easy. So yeah, hopefully there'll be more of those as well. But yeah, the big work on canvases, I don't know. We'll see. Maybe. I don't know. It's hard. Now all my budget is now going to wood. So
I want to talk about some of this new work. You are always experimenting and exploring, and especially since you've moved on from, through the Mettle Martyr stuff on, you're always leveling up. And I really appreciate about you, like every time I see a new body of work, you're doing something different. And that excites me as a viewer, as an appreciation of the work. Let's talk a little bit about what you've been doing in the last year and a half, as far as like moving forward and the new work. I know you got kinetic sculptures, which you mentioned earlier. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. This is my new found baby. I love working with wood, and the reason is that I can get weird and obsessive as I want to, or not. This is a media that I'm not good at right away, and that's something that I think within realism, I got very used to being a really good replicator. And the wood, I'm not replicating anything. I'm looking at, for instance, a puppet, and I'm looking at the movement that the puppet does. And I go, oh, that's really cool how they attach the leg, the arm to this, to that, and how it moves. And that movement is interesting to my eye. What story is that movement telling me? Okay, now how do I stick a two-dimensional painting on it? And I feel like a kid in a candy store again. Oh, and bringing in electronic devices, bringing in batteries, learning about volts and hertz and man, it's a lot. But speaking of bend the iron and circling back to that, who knows not only about working with wood, but kinetics are people that play with toy trains. So Talk about somebody that knows about LEDs, that knows how to solder, that knows about tiny motors, that knows about how to make something move, that knows about how to paint something beautifully. People that do the toy trains is like a adult hobby are some of the, you know, coolest bearers of knowledge I've ever met. But that being said, I'm still not sure I totally understand electricity. It's like, still really confusing to me.
Well, this one that I have pulled up, this is a self-portrait, right?
It is. It is a self-portrait. Yeah. I kind of sketched out a general idea of what I wanted to do on a canvas. And then I literally just walked into my garage, grabbed a bunch of spare wood, started gluing it, cut up the canvas. And this dimensionality of the work, I think when we're talking about storytelling, again, I keep going back to this, but it so tells a story so much better, doesn't it? When I'm trying to say that, you know, especially when we're talking about recovery and not, I hate the word trauma because that feels like it's overused. However, your brain literally rewires itself when you experience, especially life or death, and how things can so unexpectedly change your mindscape, literally change how your brain works within a second. And all that information is stored in the back of your brain in your medulla oblongata. And what else is stored in the back of your brain? It's all instinctual. It's all very, very like it's your preschool brain. It's like, this is a square, this is a circle, this is a, you know. And how do you talk about that brain? And how do you talk about survival? This, I wanted to address with this work, within Mettle Martyr, I think the thing that I was missing was that the story I was telling was very pretty, and it isn't pretty. And especially when I look at my own story, you know, I still wake up at night and I'll wake up and I can't breathe. And I know because I was having a dream of not being able to breathe again. And it's those moments where you wake up terrified, and it's okay. But I want to show that moment of that suddenly you no longer know how your brain works anymore. You no longer know what's going to set you off. Maybe it's the smell of an apple that was next to you when this horrible thing happened. And now, you know, you're walking through a store 10 years later and that same kind of apple's on the shelf or something. I don't know, man. Anything like that can kind of completely rewire you in a way that you're kind of unaware of, and how you deal with that and what that looks like and how that feels and how that splitting of self feels and how that, you know, that like readjustment of skin, of reshaping yourself feels, and that split, that like that contradiction of the person that you were and the person that you are, and how differently those two people react to their world. I wanted to really explore that. And I thought that movement had to be a part of it because, you know, within moving, even though we move back and we move forward, but as long as it moves, then that really gives that connotation of constancy. And, you know, the sun will rise, we will move forward, even if forward doesn't feel forward right now, and all of that. And I still really love leaving my work black and white. I still really loved a lot of those components of Mettle Martyr, that kind of surrealistic quality, but bringing in kinetics and bringing in wood and the raw quality of wood, that was an adjective that I can't tell you how many times I've heard. I felt raw. And how do you use that exposure without using like meat or, you know, raw vegetables or whatever? It has a food quality thing, but I tried to use raw canvas and paint on raw canvas and paint on raw wood and really use that like exposed element, I guess, without being too much of the nail on the head. So yeah, the wood and movement, I think, really change how I'm viewing the work. I'm still not sure about those gears on the face of that. We'll see. I was having so much fun with them while I was painting. Her. I was playing with them, and I decided to throw them on there. I don't know if I like it.
You kind of want them to turn too, is when you're
I know, right? I couldn't get them to do it. I couldn't get them to turn as well.
Yeah,
that was the idea. Oh well.
Well, they're all very cool, and I love the direction you've gone with this. And just so you know, like the one I just pulled up is actually my wife, and that you turned into a piece, and she loves it, and she's planning on coming to the opening that you're having in February because she can't wait to see what you've done with this. See it up close and personal. So
thanks. I can't wait to show her. We had fun.
What you're describing as far as your experience, I've definitely seen that firsthand, that kind of PTSD from some kind of trauma with my wife. It doesn't happen very often anymore, but what you described is exactly what she experiences. It could be a smell, it could be just a certain feeling. Man, it's hard to watch that, It's hard to be the outside looking at that person that you really love and care about, experiencing that, going through that. And you just you don't even know when it's going to happen. It just happens. And you're like, whoa, what just happened there? Again, you're just doing really important work. And thank you for doing it.
Oh, thank you for looking at it. I had the privilege of doing this work with the Firehouse Art Center. This is a residency there. I've been making a lot of these structures as a result of the residency there. And again, what an incredible outpouring of support. And I got to have the privilege of the demographic of people that are members there are a little older, and they're not, a lot of the models that I'd used prior were younger, my age or younger. And this was such a wonderful opportunity to speak to women that have had a little more perspective on their experience and that could coherently speak about their growth, for lack of a better word. And yeah, it's just been so wonderful. And to feel like that I'm doing something that might shed a little bit of a spotlight in that part of their spirit that felt muted. It's been phenomenal. And kinetics suck, but in a good way, like I'm a baby still with it, and again, I don't even remember being this bad at an art form, like especially within 2 dimensions. I'm so new. I'm so bad at it. It's the best. It's like I get to learn it, and I'm leaving like, I know how to like, countersink my drill holes and to cover everything up. And with this series I've been doing, series of structures, I'm leaving it all. I let the wires hang out. I let the nail head show, the screw heads show. I leave, I write notes on the wood as I go, and I mark things and what have you, and leave it. I try not to sand it very much. I just let it all hang out, and just, here's all the screw ups. And, wood is so unforgiving. Oh, such a son. But there's something that like reclaiming power that, messing around with power tools can give you that's awesome, And now through this, I feel like I can build a lot of cool shit.
Right. Right. And
If
you're only
there's
going to
a
get better. That's the beautiful thing. You're only going to get better.
thanks, yeah, it's so much fun to have a new way to say the same thing, but to say it. I feel like this is giving it that third wall you're breaking, especially within the advocacy component of the work. Like now, not only are you viewing the work and you're viewing that statistic, and maybe that touches you, but you're experiencing it head to toe. And each piece either, is like an instrument, like one of them, one of them makes noise and is like bells. And I loved that, kind of idea of like there's ups, there's downs, but it continues to make noise. And anything from that is considered kinetics to like, electricity and lights. And there's just this whole new world opening up. I haven't figured out how to weld yet, so that's why I'm kind of stuck with wood. But
I bet
That's
you
next,
welding
right?
that'll come next. That and
yeah,
soldering, yeah.
yeah. I have had the privilege lately too of getting to know Ira Sherman a little better. I know you guys know him.
Yeah.
And he's been a wealth of knowledge, especially he speaks fluent Amy. So I can say, all right, it's the thingy that does this when it does this. And this is also the super dumb thing about kind of trade work, I guess. But okay, I use this example a lot, but do you know the difference between a radial bearing and an axle bearing? I will tell you, it's the dumbest. It's a 5 millimeter lip on the bearing. But when you're trying to find what hardware you need to order for a project, and you're like, but it needs to have the lip on the end of it, and you type in radial bearing with a lip and nothing happens, you need somebody who has a knowledge base that you can say, okay, I need a radial bearing, but like with a lip.
Right.
and yeah, somebody can say, well, try this, try that, or whatever. But yeah, I'm really interested after this whole thing to start further exploring kind of all of these components and putting them together and bringing back that interactive puzzle solving kind of quality too. So what I'm really excited about after this one, so one of the sculptures in particular, every button you press is a word from a sentence. And the essence of the sentence, and I forget the exact wording, is essentially like, nevertheless, she persisted, right? One of those classic, but I formulated the sentence, so it says something a little more complex than that. But each of those words in the sentence, I put another synonym to that word on a little sound bite and then soldered that on a button. And then I had my 6-year-old daughter record about 16 iterations, so 16 synonyms for each of the words in the sentence. So you approach this structure, and it's actually one of my friends from the Firehouse Art Center, and she's in her 70s. So her face is beautifully mature, and you press these buttons on the structure and it says the poem or sentence or whatever about, I think that we totaled it out, it's like over 1,000 different ways you can do the sentence, but it's my daughter's voice on top of it. So it's that really fun juxtaposition of like noise and visuals and wood, so you're getting so much information and you get to interact. And so it's an experience. It's a much more complete experience. And my model for that, the way I got all inspired, is she's a poet. So she talked a lot about words helped her survive. And so how do you give that breath and shape? That's really hard to do with visuals. So why not bring in some words?
I love it.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So This is all stuff that we're going to see at this next show that happens February 9th.
Ninth. Yes.
And what is the
Yes.
show called?
You ready for this one? It's a working title, but I think we're calling it Spit and Splinters.
And it's a working title. It's
Well,
not for sure.
I like it because, again, it uses the alliteration. But when we're talking about the experience, and especially, I wanted it to be something very visceral, very, very connotative of your body, and not, when I was speaking of those moments of reliving and how survival looks into your lifespan and what your brain does. All of those experiences are stored in your medulla those are very animalistic reactions. And so I wanted it to be something really like about your body, And so, and then I wanted to use splinters because I get a lot of them.
Yeah, I like it.
Thanks. Okay. I don't know. I thought that would be interesting, and then maybe title it put under Spit and Splinters, and then say something like an art show of human strength, right? I don't know.
Sure.
I like that.
Yeah,
a lot actually.
Thanks. Yeah. It's every single person I've had the privilege of talking to, and I haven't gone crazy this time. I didn't, have 65 interviews lined up or anything. What it impressed upon me, what every single one of these humans really impressed upon me, is that they have a fucking place in Valhalla. Their names etched in a throne. They are survivors to their core. That there is nothing you can't throw at any of these people that would change who they were. And talk about the metal getting tested, every single one of these individuals. I'm so lucky that I was, timing is usually my enemy, but this particular situation, I was in the right place, the right time to meet a lot of people that gave me every single thing that they could about who they were, how they were, and how they've grown. And that's so much more than I even knew I needed.
So in addition to the kinetic sculptures, are we going to see other work as well?
Yes. So I have about 7 or 8 two-dimensional works that'll be on the wall, and then that will be in the main gallery. And then in my studio space where I'm working now, I'll clean that out. And Lindy Bush, who I think you guys interviewed her last month, 2 months ago. She's to give, because we didn't really know what to do with that space. I am going to have I think 1 or 2 sculptures in there as well, but just to give that fun micro macro juxtaposition, she's putting, I think, 10 or 12 of her Altoid paintings, the Altoid boxes. The plein air paintings she does that are really tiny.
Yeah.
So she's putting those up in that space as well.
Nice.
To kind of, flesh it out a bit, which I really appreciate Lindy's work and what she's about and how she works. And so this will be really fun because I got to kind of bring her into the fold of this group of people at the Firehouse that I adore them. And when this residency is over, it will be so hard not to be able to go there every day. I've just enjoyed the hell out of them.
So was this your first residency?
It was, sir. Yes. And Elaine Waterman, who is the executive director there, what a cool person. She was my cheerleader from the beginning. I actually applied for their summer residency program. That's 2 months. And she came back to me and said, you really ought to try this 4-month program. And if you were to apply to this 4-month program, you might end up getting it. So I just basically just resubmitted. And yeah, I was the one that they picked. And yeah, she's been such a great buddy to have somebody to bend my ear, or, bend her ear, and kind of, she's a great sounding board, but she also asks me really important questions about what I'm doing. And where I have only ever worked with commercial retail galleries, this is a different thing because the residency program comes with a grant for a portion of your materials. I ended up smoking through that pretty quick, but wood and all. But that way she can, really give me the encouragement to dig into what I really wanted to say. And it's so nice to be taken so seriously. I can't say how edifying that has been for me, and I'm really gonna miss it. So in February that'll all be wrapped up, and it's a really cool group of people.
Well, that sounds fantastic, and congratulations that you've been able to have this experience and it be such a positive thing. And, once again, elevating your life and your work and taking it to the next level, right? Leveling up one more time.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. I have a vision for someday in the future, if anybody ever wants to throw money at the idea, is to have like a completely immersive room where it's all one interactive piece interacting with itself and you. So that would be, I think, the ultimate goal, figuring out how one thing can interact with itself and yet another thing, and really bring back to the bend the iron, but bring neuroscience aspects into advocacy.
So 2024, your residency ends at the tail end of February. You have this show at the beginning of February 9th. What else do you have going on in the coming year, or that you're looking forward to, or that you want to promote?
Nothing. I'm actually going to take about 4 months off of any gallery work because I'm getting married.
Oh, wow.
Congratulations.
Wow.
Yeah, yep. I'm gonna go spend money on a party.
Nice.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Well, that's exciting.
It is.
Yeah, thank you.
It's been a long time coming.
Yes, it has. And every time I would sit down and want to throw money at this, I could never justify it because I'd always have a show coming up, or the kids would have something important on the horizon, or, whatever. And I'd always find an excuse. But yeah, the coolest thing is, though, that I've is that the right word? I've been able to incorporate my art friends. So I've got one friend who's a sculptor, and she's making me something to walk down the aisle with because I didn't want flowers. So she's using pages of my sketchbook and Luke's sketchbook and stuff like that. So it'll be fun. It's a lot.
Yes, it is. So I got to ask, is it the guy that held the ladder in Fort Collins?
Yep.
Shared a lunch with you, and now you're getting married.
There it is.
At least he won't be homeless anymore.
There you go. No.
I'm just kidding.
Luke is as we've been, oh God, how long has it been? I don't even know. Engaged quite a while.
Is that right?
But we never could quite get around to doing the thing. Which is mostly my fault because I keep saying, well, after this show. Oh, but look, I just got accepted to this. Maybe after this. Oh, look, I just got accepted to this. Maybe after that.
Well, you'll have to be intentional with the next couple months off then.
Yeah, that's exactly, that was the deal, that I would do this residency, finish it out with a bang, and also take a brain break from the crazy production schedule that I like to keep in and around a show. So, but I can't wait to show you what I just finished. It's so cool.
Well,
It
I'm
like
excited.
folds in and out. It's really cool. I
Nice.
wanted to have it finished before I talked to you guys today. So this is my goal for the week. So yeah, talk about all the hardware. It was like $150 in hardware. Good Lord.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's pretty interesting. And like the unfolding and folding back in, it's a really cool piece and can't wait to share it with the world.
Nice. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Congrats.
Thank you. Thank you. I have to stop making them after this. That's going to be the really tricky part.
Well, I have one more question for you before we let off this evening. Been asking this a lot in the last year. Do you have a mantra or motto that you live by?
Mm-hmm. I know this sounds so stupid, but like I said, I think I mentioned that I don't sleep beautifully. I'm not a great sleeper, never have been. And that's when I do a lot of the art that I make is I do it at night when everybody else is asleep. And as a result, my body suffers, my brain suffers, but it's okay. I always ask myself again, are you suffering because you like suffering, or are you suffering for your art? And so that's my mantra. I like to ask a lot of my are you suffering for your art? If that's why, that's okay. So only like suffering for your art, that's fine. It's okay to be a martyr to your art. Maybe the only excuse I can find, but that's kind of I don't know if that's exactly a mantra, but I do ask myself that like 87 times a day probably. So
So do you find yourself answering differently at different times? Do you suffer because you enjoy suffering? As she drops her head. I'll take that as a yes. You don't have to answer.
I think that's the human question, right? Because as creatives, I love that how Deepak Chopra put it. He says, as the fully enlightened mind, and this is true, like we get into flow state. That's the most alive our brains are, right? Is when we are facing adversity and we are creating because of that. So that's how we get the closest to the ultimate or but as a result, often creatives, we create our own adversity. We do this to ourselves a lot. And so I often have to check, and then I do it to myself all the time, intentionally or not. But sometimes you have to look and say, do I actually feel this way about this? Or is this a way that I am pushing myself to feel so I can react with visuals? And I can feel intensely as I react with my visuals. And that is a bad habit. But I think that we do it on purpose, but not on purpose. So yes, I'd absolutely do it. But I think any creative person, any maker person does that, but maybe not to the extent that it's self-harming. Right. Is that a good answer?
Sure. That's a great answer.
Yeah. I try to play with that line, try not to go too far with it until it creates harm. And then that's bad, but yeah. Right. Either way, some cool shit's getting made, you guys. So
there you go. So the benefit in the long run is sometimes you got to suffer for your art. So
goddamn right you do.
So I got one question, and I know there's probably no answer to this, but as you know, when we first talked, I was like, this stuff needs to come to South Dakota because, and I know Rapid City's not ready for it, but I still think your stuff needs to come to South Dakota. what would it either A, cost, or how could a guy get your stuff up here? I mean, obviously you got to pack everything up. You got to haul it up here. We got to find a space for it. But once again, I think the message is too important not to have it travel. Have you thought about it having a traveling exhibit and what that would entail?
We tried this
Okay.
summer. I was working with the gallery in Las Vegas, and we were under contract to do kind of a annotated version of Mettle Martyr.
Mhm.
And a week before, they came back and decided that it was too controversial.
Oh my God.
It was, nope, I can't even. Oh my God.
I mean, how do you like go through all this? Not you. How does a person go through all the steps and then come back and say, oh my God, it's too controversial? Like, obviously somebody thought this is important enough. We should have it come to Vegas. And man,
It was a, I'm
anyway.
going to try to put this very judiciously. The individual that owned the gallery wasn't always in charge of decision making, but ultimately they had the final say. And I don't think it was brought to their attention because my initial meeting with them, I mean, I sought them out because I thought Mettle would have a really good home there. I thought that would be an interesting audience for it. And there's got that pop retro quality that's very old Vegas. I was like, oh, this is going to be great. And so they showed quite a bit of my work, some kind of the remnants of the old Mettle Martyr stuff and some, just little things here and there. And then, changed their minds at the last minute. I mean, there was no financial recourse or they're not, I don't know what, but I would love to see it in other places. And I especially would love to see it in demographics that might not know how accessible some of those messages are, especially in terms of the statistics. I feel that because I put like a little like side, I put like a little funny line in there and all of that. I think those are it makes it a lot easier to swallow with a little drop of honey, and it's fun. And then especially now that I'm doing more interactive stuff, I would love to see it in more places. So I'll reapply to the doll maybe with this new series. But yeah, you just have to pack it up in a U-Haul, bring it on down or up, I guess, in this case.
So here, and I kind of said this before, and of course, neither one of us went through with it, but let's talk about it. Let's pitch it together. And maybe the doll isn't the place for it, but maybe there's someplace else. I mean, sexual violence in South Dakota is pretty heavy because of the Native American population, right? And
yes.
So, and violence in itself.
Right.
I would love to see it come here. I don't know what that would take. I don't, but I once again, I'll say it. I think your stuff is so important that message needs to get out. And I love the vehicle you use to get the message out.
Thanks, man. Thank you so much. It means the world coming from you guys too, because I know you see a lot of art and a lot of good art. And so thank you. It's sometimes, there's those moments where it's like, F it, I'm working at Walmart. I'm applying to Walmart tomorrow.
I feel that way too, though.
Yeah. But right. I mean, the richest man in the world doesn't have the relationships that we've been able to maintain over the years, so or the richest woman in the world or whatever.
Yeah.
I think there's an authenticity to the struggle that it's worth it. It's worth it. Grind it out. Be with the cool minds, and one of us gets famous, we all get famous, baby.
There you go. Well, once the dust settles from your wonderful wedding that's happening, maybe you and I can share a coffee.
Hell yeah.
And
I'm
make
down.
a plan.
I'm into this.
Well, you know how much I love you, Amy. You know that, right?
You too. I love you too, Wes.
And if I'm not into ears, but I'm into your ears. That's a reference to an earlier conversation for the people that are like, what? He is creepy. That's Thank you.
All right.
It's been such a great evening. I so enjoy talking to you. I love seeing you in person. I love the moments that we spend together, which isn't very often, but I always look forward to them. You're a light in the darkness, and I thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you. That just filled my whole heart up.
Good.
It's all the way to the brim. Thank you. Thank you so much. And the same goes for you guys. I think you're contributing so much to the conversation and getting the word out. It's lovely. So I appreciate you giving me your ear.
Thank you.
Well, we appreciate the time that you spent with us tonight, away from your kids, away from Luke. And
yeah. Everybody got kicked out tonight.
That's
looking
nice.
looking forward to seeing your work up at the firehouse. So
Woohoo. All right. Well, thanks, guys.
don't forget to follow Amy on Instagram at @Lummus Art and check out her extraordinary work at her website, amyleelummus.com. Amy's exhibition Spit and Splinters opens Friday, February 9th from 6 to 8 p.m. at Firehouse Art Center, located at 667 4th Avenue in Longmont, Colorado. As always, look for all this information and more in this week's episode notes. For the Tenet Podcast, I'm Todd Pearson.
And I'm Wes Brown.
Have a great week.